Hi everybody, so welcome to the third part of this week's tutorial work then. So what we're now going to do is try and put some of these things that we've been doing into an actual quick sequence. So we're going to go into our folder and I'm going to get our whirl shot base, for example, and I'm just going to bring in this green screen track that we've used earlier. Now, if you did this, the one earlier of me, and you've actually used the rotor brush tool to cut me out against the backdrop and you've exported it, please import that. Remember, you have to export it with the alpha channel added, so RGB plus alpha. If not, or if you're just trying to do this quickly, then I'll go over another quick way of getting a result from this. So I'm going to pick up my whirl shot first of all. I'm going to drag it down onto my new composition symbol here. So here's my new composition. Okay, and first of all, I'm going to try and figure out where this actually becomes a shot. So at the moment you can see there was the tripod in there, which I've then taken out within the shot. We kind of want to get this to a point where it actually starts to smoothly rotate. So remember, on your keyboard you can use the page up and page down keys to figure this stuff out. Because I'm on a Mac keyboard, I'm just going to do it roughly by eye. So it starts about there. I'm going to use my set my work area to here, so I'm not trying to render anything that I don't. Like so, it rotates around and then gradually corkscrews in to the gradually corkscrews in to the shot, like so. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the footage of me standing there and doing silly dances and stuff, and we're going to put that over the top and then gradually track it to this whirling shot. So there's a few ways of doing that we're going to look at. First of all, let's get our footage into the composition. So there I am in front of the green screen. So what I'm going to do first of all, open this up and scale the footage down like so. Now you could go through the process of rotor brushing me if you wanted to. If you wanted to get really clean lines, that's fine, or you might have done it in the previous composition, as I say, and then you can import that, no problem. If you haven't got that, just a quick way of getting somebody out of a green screen is, first of all, we can use this mask tool, so the rectangular mask tool, just to get rid of all that stuff on the ceiling, because that stuff we can't key that out, like these lines and the light and stuff. So at the moment we've got rid of the footage, which isn't what we want, so we're going to come down to green screen 2 here. I'm going to actually right click on that just quickly and rename that James. And in the James footage here, here's our first mask that we've just made, and we can just click on invert, and now that's going to cut out the bit that we've masked rather than anything outside the mask. So there's me. Then what we can do is we can go over into our effects and presets. If you can't see that, you can go up into effects up here, same thing, keying, okay, color range, and so then that applies the color range, or you can do it over here. I'm just going to undo that. Undo apply color range. So you can go over here to color range and you can drag that either over onto the footage there, or you can drag it onto that bit. If you do it onto the comp, make sure that you're applying it to the right one, so you're not applying it to the background, you're applying it to this one. It's easier if you just drop it onto the layer like that. Okay, then what we can do is use our dropper tool to say, okay, I want to dropper. So don't make the mistake of starting off with the plus, because it can sometimes go a bit funny if you do that. So start off with the dropper first and you click on the backdrop and it'll take out some of that backdrop. Then you can use the dropper with a plus and you're saying, and I want this green shade, and I want this green shade, and I want this one. And now there's just that little bit around the feet, like so. And you can tidy that up. That's going to be okay for our purposes. I might perhaps try and just get rid of that little bit of green edging, but it might not be. Yeah, it's kind of just about what that'll do. That'll be fine for our purposes. I don't want to sport with your patience too much. Again though, you could use the rotor brush tool if you want a much better look. Right then, we're going to scale him down a bit more, and we're going to, it's not quite done, look, you can still see a little bit of green in the background. I'm just going to apply that to there just to get that out. There we go. So I can scale him down a bit more, and then I can position him up from side to side, sorry, or up at the top, onto the top of my little world. Right then, so far so good. So there's a couple of ways that we can track him. First of all, if you zoom into your footage, actually, you'll find that when I prepared this footage, if we just turn off the James, I actually included, if we move the footage along, you'll find that I've actually included a little red dot here, which is designed to help you to track your footage to that little marker by putting his toe on that little marker. But if you don't want to do that, if you just want to do it by eye, then please do. It's not like it's going to be a major thing for this tutorial. So I'm going to bring this back to the start. Okay, turn him back on. There we go. So there he is in our footage. Okay, so because this is a circular motion on this composition, there's a really quick way of getting a circular movement with our mask path. We're going to do both today, just so you understand it for more complicated movements as well. But there is first of all a very quick way of doing this, and see that this is the target here. This is the anchor point for this character. Okay. So what we can do is, if I rotate my character now, you should see that my character rotates around that anchor point. You see, and of course what that means is, if we position that anchor point somewhere else in the composition, he should rotate around that. Let me just try and reduce some of my processing on my machine so that it's not getting that processor noise going on. So what I'm going to do is, the way to do this is you can adjust your anchor point and your position separately or together. So if you move the position, the anchor point moves with the character, or if you adjust the anchor point, that moves the character independently of the anchor point. Confused? Hopefully you won't be in a minute. See what I mean? I'm going to move my character down first of all, so that the anchor point is roughly in the center of the circle. So that looks about right, doesn't it? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to now move my anchor point and move my character independently of the anchor. And what that means is, if I now move him up to here, then what I can do is, when I rotate, instead of him rotating on the spot, he now rotates around that anchor point. Do you see how that's working? It's not quite in the center yet, so now I can just fettle my position to get it in the middle. Is that about right there? That's about right. So then I can use my anchor point to adjust like so. But hopefully you can see what we're trying to do here, which is that as I now rotate, he should rotate around the edge of the circle, and lo and behold, of course, if we now turn on the stopwatch for rotation, what you'll find is, as the footage rotates to there, for example, I don't even need to adjust my positioning of my character. All I need to do, and this is only very, very rough, but just to show you, all I need to now do is just rotate my character like so. I mean, I might want to fettle the position as well if I haven't got it exactly right, but you can see what's happened now is that he's now rotating around with the footage very roughly, yeah, because I haven't quite got the anchor point in the middle, but you get the idea. So that's how the anchor point operates. Okay, for the purposes of this tutorial though, what we want to do is we want to make sure that our we understand what's going on with our mask. Okay, so what we're going to do instead then is we're going to look at the mask movement, and using a Bezier curve, so a bit like what we've done earlier using the pen tool, we're going to use that same process of using the pen tool with the handles, except what we're going to do is we're going to use it to adjust the movement of our mask. So I'm going to just keep undoing this back until I get to the point where the anchor point has gone back to the center of our character. There we go. So here's what we would do then for a more complicated movement. So this is the start of our footage here. Okay, and I'm going to turn on my anchor point, and I'm going to turn on my position. I might turn on my stopwatch for scale, because I might need to rescale him at some point, and I'm going to turn on my rotation. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my playhead marker through until I get to the point where the footage starts to zoom in. So it's about there. So if you can't use the page up, page down keys, if you're using a keyboard like mine, which is a Mac keyboard, and it doesn't have page up, page down keys, you can just hold down the command key, then you can use your arrows, and your arrows will advance you frame by frame. Page up, page down will do the same thing. So that's the point at which it's starting to zoom in, isn't it? There we go. So that's the frame that we want. Okay. So what we're going to do now then is I'm going to rotate him. Now you have to make sure that he rotates the correct way, because if you put him in the wrong way, if you rotate him clockwise, then obviously he's going to go the wrong way compared to your footage. So let's rotate him down. So it was I think it was on +1, wasn't it, the angle? So I'm going to go for 181 degrees, minus 181. And then I'm going to bring him down like so. And I should have said, actually, when I was doing that earlier, I'd lined it up so that the doors of the main building are kind of equally between his knees, like that. You know, so that gives me a guide. If I'm not using that little red thing that I put in earlier, I can still use those doors as a guide. Okay. So here's what we've got now, is we've got our footage rotating and we've got our character rotating and moving between 2 points. But of course, the character isn't tracking with the footage. On the contrary, he's now like right in the middle. So what we do now then, because we've got our anchor point stopwatch turned on, it now shows the movement of the anchor point. If you didn't have that turned on, you wouldn't get these handles in the same way. But because we've got anchor point turned on, we can now adjust the mask path for that anchor point. What this means, hopefully you'll see in a second. So if I now position my character over here, can you see what's happening? That we're actually getting those handles now, and we're getting a movement which isn't a straight line, but is in fact a curve. If we zoom in slightly, we can see that his legs aren't quite equidistant with the doors. So I'm going to just drop his positioning down slightly as well, like that. I might just rotate him a little bit as well, just to sort of make sure that he's looking good. Okay, that's fine. That'll do. Okay, so there's our position. The reason why I adjusted it slightly is because I'm probably not completely accurately halfway between these 2 points. So what you can hopefully now see is we've got the footage where he's tracked at the top of the circle, at the bottom of the circle, and in the middle of the circle. But you can still see what's going on here, is that when we go to like halfway between those 2 anchor points, we now have a point where he's still in the center, and we don't want that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pick up this handle here, and we're going to adjust that by dragging that. And so now, can you see what's happening? Is that we're going to get a slightly smoother tracking circle. I'll just go and close my door. Slightly smoother tracking circle. So we can now see that he's now rotating on that mask path that we've adjusted in the same way, in the same fashion that we did our masks earlier by using those handles. Okay, same in the bottom here, look. So we're going to go halfway between these points, and you'll notice, look, that it's not created a new keyframe. What it's done is it's added information to these keyframes to say that's the curve that I want you to make. So it's going to do the same thing here. We're going to drag that to the side, and there we go. Your best bet, by the way, when you're trying to create these movements is to try to keep your lines as sort of either vertical or horizontal as possible, because that's the best way to get the nice curve. So now we've got a position where he is now rotating around the circle, which is all good. Now the more complicated bit starts though, because now it's going to continue to turn, but it's also going to corkscrew in, and so his positioning is going to change a little bit. Let's see, I might just rotate him a little bit actually, because it's not quite right, so I'm going to go with, yeah, something a bit like that. I'll do. His positioning isn't quite right either, is it? So I'm just going to position him, oops, reposition him this way slightly. There we go. That's better. Good. Okay. And I'm just going to make sure that that curve still works roughly. I am not going to fettle it for the purposes of this tutorial, but you can play with it if you want to. Okay, same sort of thing then now. We're going to move along, and now it's going to zoom in. We're going to get to that point where it's basically at, on its side, isn't it? So it's, yeah, like that. And now we're going to rotate him again, so he's like that. Now, I'm not going to bother scaling him in this one, because I want him at the end to kind of be in a scale where he's roughly the same size as he ought to be. Now, I might have made him too big, so I might have to scale him down, but we'll see. We'll play with him for now. Okay, so there we go. So we can now move that like so. Rotate him a little bit like that, so his toes are touching. Bring him down a little bit. There we go. So that's not looking too bad. So now what we'll find is if we move back, look, same sort of thing, we now need to adjust the angle. But this is where it gets a bit ticklish, because if we start to adjust the angle, what After Effects is going to want to do is it's going to want to adjust the previous curve as well, because it thinks it's going to be a continuous movement, but of course it's not, because it's corkscrewing. So now if we adjust that one handle, it's going to adjust the other, and it's going to make the whole thing not work. So what we have to do now is we have to hold down the Command key. I'm not sure what it is on a PC actually, but just keep trying it until you find the right one. And this is the one that allows you to adjust one handle independently of the other. So what we're going to do is we can click on that point so we can see both handles. And now if I hold down Command, I should be able to adjust, he says, sorry, not Command, Option, the Option key. I do apologise. It's the Option key on a Mac, isn't it? Hold down the Option key. No. It was Command. It was the Apple key. That's weird. Okay, fair enough. Either way, there is a key which you hold it down, because it just did it a minute ago with the Option key. That's very confusing. There is a key and you hold it down, and one handle will be adjusted and the other one won't. Okay, so you just need to find whichever the key that is. So now we're going to doing that, and you can see how it doesn't on the face of it look like a smooth movement, because it gets to that point and now it's starting to grow. But of course we know that that movement will start to track to the correct point. It is, however, incorrect, as you can see, because it isn't still smooth enough. So what you have to try and do now is you have to make a judgment call. Do I need to adjust the mask path, or do I actually need to add another keyframe? The more keyframes you add, the more kind of juddery your footage will look. So you want to try and avoid adding keyframes. But I know from experience that with this kind of corkscrewing effect, you're going to need to add some. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate him slightly to make sure that he's still lining up with that, and then I'm going to adjust him because he's not in line with the door anyway. So I'm going to adjust him so that he now moves slightly like so. I'm going to perhaps rotate him again just to make sure that he kind of lines up a bit. There we are. And of course what I've got now is I've got another point where I can make an adjustment. So now between these two I can now adjust my path. So if I'm going to go to here, I can hold down Command and I can adjust him back to where he was, and now that's looking smoother, isn't it, as a movement. And we're going to get to here. So again, I could spend time fettling this, but I'm not going to sport with your patience by doing it. But can you see how I'm using both handles of these two keyframes now to adjust that mask path? Same here. So I'm now going to click on here to go, right, okay, where is he? There, he's about there. So I can now hold down the Command key, adjust him there, move him to here. Make sure, yeah, that's not looking too bad, so that's alright. Get to that keyframe, he's looking okay. Same sort of thing again then, we're going to move through. So you can hopefully see what I'm doing. I might speed this up when I do the edit, just because you've hopefully got the idea now. But that's about there, isn't it? So I'm just going to use my hold down Command and adjust my... There we go, so that's the final frame. Just refresh that. Same sort of thing then, so I'm going to rotate him around like so. I'm going to bring him roughly across to here, so he's between the doors like that, so he's in the same spot, and then I can drop his position down like so. He is a bit big, so I might scale him down actually in a minute. Perhaps because he's a bit too big compared to like the bin and everything. So what I might do at this stage then, just to make sure, is I might go back and rescale him. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm not going to bother, just because I don't want to sport with your patience. Okay, so again, same sort of thing then. We can come to here, and I might just kind of go, I'm going to add another keyframe at this stage. So I'm going to just bring him up like so. You just have to, like when it's on an angle like this, you're just going to have to keep fettling it to kind of get it to where you want it to be. So that's about there. Let's say that that's that. Okay, same sort of thing then. So we're going to go to this point here. He's now not where he needs to be, so I can click on this point here. If at any point you have got keyframes and you don't get the handles, you can just click on the pen tool like so. And then we should get those handles like that. So now I should be able to hold down the command key. I should be able to adjust him, that sort of thing, to make a nice smooth movement, hopefully. And there we are. So now he's reasonably smooth. Go to here again, same sort of thing. So we can click on there and hopefully get a nice movement like that. I perhaps need to do, oops, daisy, perhaps need to do this one as well, get the handle for this one, bring him up like so. So because I've clicked on that, it's slightly adjusted it now, so I might need to go back and change that. Oops, no, so I'm making a mess now. No, not that do I? Let's position him there. I'm just going to add another keyframe just by positioning him by eye at this stage. So then get to that point there. It's kind of about there. So now the curvature has gone a bit wrong. So I can try and just adjust that, try and keep it as smooth as I can. So anyway, you get the idea. You can fettle this to your heart's content. I'm not going to keep mucking about with it though, because I'm kind of going to go, you know what, that's probably good enough for our purposes. Okay, so that is my footage then, which has now been tracked, and hopefully you can see the principle, which is the way that the mask path is manipulatable by using the handles, a bit like we just did when we were creating the masks in the first place. Okay, so it's quite a useful tool, and once you get used to the idea of using those handles, there's lots of different applications for it, different ways that you can do it. As a final little thing for this footage, obviously one of the things about this footage is he's not been color graded to match the footage, so I could do that to try and make him look a bit more like he's bedded in, but he's still going to look a bit like he's floating over the top of the footage because he doesn't look like he's actually stood there. So the final thing that I could do is I can go to the beginning of my footage, for example, and I might go to layer, and I might go to new and solid, and I might pick like a color from that solid. I might go something like this sort of darky browny kind of yellowy color, just because it's part of the scene. It's already a color from the scene, so it looks okay. I'm going to turn that off. What I'm going to do is just zoom in slightly, and I'm going to get my pen tool, so making sure I'm highlighting my solid. In fact, I'm going to rename that, so right click and rename that shadow. And then highlighting shadow, what I can do is just pick out the area underneath his feet using the mask technique that we used earlier, like that. If there was very clear shadow in the footage, you'd want to try and match that. So if the sun was coming from over here, for example, you'd want to try and match the shadow to keep it straight. You might want to curve it around the footage and then straighten it out as the footage goes. But with this one, it's not really a problem because, you know, it's fine. So what I'm going to do is just turn that on. So now that's under his feet. I'm going to bring that down so you can see my feet over the top. And finally, I'm going to go into the mask for my shadow. There's mask 1. I'm just going to feather the edge of that so that it's just a bit like so. Okay. Can you see what's going to happen now though, of course, is that when I play my footage, lo and behold, that stays exactly where it is. So all you need to do now is you just need to go back to the start, and like we've done previously with the tracking stuff, you just need to get that shadow, you need to pick up this pick whip, and you need to parent it to the James footage so it goes wherever James goes. And now as we rotate the footage, the shadow will rotate with him. Okay, so if I now just hit that, I could fettle that shadow to make it look a little bit less obvious, for example, so I might feather the edge a bit more. A quick tip, I don't know what it is on a PC, I'm afraid, but on a Mac, Shift, Command and H, so try something similar, takes away those controls so you can actually see what you're doing. So I could just blend it in a bit more like that, for example, just so it's a slightly darker thing under his feet. Rotate him around, and of course that shadow will now go wherever he goes. So we can rotate around, and then as it starts to zoom in, it will also rotate with him. If we were going to scale him down, which we might want to do, then obviously the shadow would scale down as well. So same sort of thing. So yeah, so I hope that's been useful. So what we've done is we've looked at the way of using that technique of using the handles to adjust the mask path. I've just noticed that he's floated away, so I'd want to go back into my mask path now and actually like figure out what's going on. Because for whatever reason it's not, yeah, the mask is adjusted, so I need to figure that out with these handles or whatever. Do you know what I mean? That sort of thing. So that's how I would then start to adjust that. So yeah, but that's the principle. So we've kind of adjusted that mask path by using these handles, and we've also looked at the anchor point as well, because for more basic movements you might want to just use the anchor point. Okay, so have a crack at that, see how you get on, and yeah, look forward to seeing what you come up with. Nice one.